I never thought I'd be the kind of person to check bank statements obsessively, but there I was at 2 a.m., staring at my phone screen with trembling hands. The numbers didn't lie, even though I desperately wanted them to. $15,000. Gone. My college fund, the one my late mother had carefully built for me before cancer took her when I was 12, had been systematically drained over the past 8 months. Small withdrawals at first, 200 here, 500 there, but then they got bolder. The most recent one just 3 days ago was for $3,000, labeled simply as family expenses. But here's the thing that made my blood run cold. Only 3 people had access to that account. My father, who'd been working double shifts at the hospital and barely had time to sleep, let alone orchestrate financial theft. My grandmother, who was 86 and couldn't remember her own email password. And Rebecca, my stepmother of 4 years, the woman who'd swooped into our lives 18 months after Mom's death with her perfect smile and promises to honor your mother's memory. I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my bedroom. It was her, padding toward the kitchen in those expensive silk slippers she'd bought last month. The ones that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. My hands clenched around my phone. Every instinct screamed at me to confront her right then, to storm out and demand answers. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way she'd looked at me over dinner earlier, with that concerned stepmother expression she'd perfected, asking about my classes, my friends, whether I was eating enough. Or maybe it was the memory of what my mother told me 2 weeks before she died, her frail hand gripping mine with surprising strength. Maya, people will show you who they are. Watch them. Listen. But choose your moments carefully. I took a screenshot of every transaction, then another of my current balance. $2,847.32. Out of an original $18,000. The apartment was silent again. Rebecca had returned to the master bedroom, to my father who trusted her completely, who'd signed over power of attorney for my account when he married her, thinking it would make things easier if something happened to him during his long hospital shifts. I opened my laptop and started a new document, fingers flying across the keyboard. If I was going to do this, I needed evidence. I needed a plan. And most importantly, I needed to understand exactly how deep this betrayal went. The bank's website yielded more information than I expected. Each withdrawal had been made in person, at a branch 15 miles from our apartment, the one near that boutique shopping district Rebecca loved. I cross-referenced the dates with my phone's calendar, matching them against days when she'd told my father she was running errands or meeting old friends for lunch. Every single one aligned perfectly. But it was what I found next that changed everything. The thing that transformed my anger into something colder, more calculating. Because buried in my downloads folder was a PDF I'd forgotten about. My mother's original trust document, the one she'd had her attorney draft in the hospital. I opened it with shaking hands, scanning through legal language until I found the clause that made my heart stop. The provision my mother had insisted on, the one that would activate if certain conditions were met. And that's when I realized Rebecca had made a fatal mistake. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing your locations. Now back to the story. The next morning I did something I'd never done before. I called in sick to my classes. My women's literature seminar would have to survive without me, because I had more important things to do. Like becoming a detective in my own life. I waited until my father left for his shift at 6 a.m., his kiss on my forehead feeling like a betrayal he didn't even know he was committing. Then I waited another hour, listening to Rebecca's morning routine. The shower running, her blow dryer humming, the clink of her coffee cup against the marble countertop she'd insisted on installing last year. I'm heading to campus. I called out, jangling my keys loudly. Have a wonderful day, sweetheart. Her voice was warm, maternal, perfect. I made it sound like I'd left, slamming the front door hard. But instead of going to the elevator, I took the stairs down one flight and waited in the emergency stairwell, counting the minutes on my phone. 17 minutes later, I heard our apartment door open and close. Through the small window in the stairwell, I watched Rebecca emerge, designer purse over her shoulder, wearing the Burberry coat she'd bought during her self-care shopping trip 2 months ago. The one that cost $2,400. Almost exactly the amount of one of the larger withdrawals from my account. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to stay calm. Emotional responses were what she'd be expecting. What I needed was information. I gave her a 5-minute head start, then followed. She didn't take her car, which surprised me. Instead, she walked 3 blocks to the subway station, her heels clicking against the pavement with the confidence of someone who believed she'd gotten away with something. I stayed far enough back that she wouldn't notice me, grateful for the morning crowd that provided cover. She took the red line toward downtown, and I slipped into the next car, watching her through the connecting window. She checked her phone constantly, smiling at something on the screen in a way I'd never seen her smile at my father. We rode for 23 minutes. I counted every stop, my mind racing through possibilities. Where was she going? What was she spending my mother's money on? The boutique district was in the opposite direction. She got off at Riverside Station, and my heart started pounding harder. This was the financial district, all glass towers and men in expensive suits. I followed her into a building with gold lettering on the door. Premier Investment Solutions. An investment firm? Why would she need? But I couldn't follow her inside without being obvious, so I did the next best thing. I found a coffee shop across the street with a perfect view of the entrance and settled in with my laptop, opening the firm's website. What I found there made my hands shake so badly I nearly spilled my coffee. Premier Investment Solutions specialized in overseas accounts, asset protection, and, here's what made my blood run cold, discreet wealth management for complex family situations. I pulled up the bank statements again, looking at them with fresh eyes. The pattern was clear now, obvious in a way it hadn't been before. Rebecca wasn't just stealing my college money for shopping sprees and fancy dinners. She was moving it, systematically, preparing for something bigger. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. "How are classes going, honey? Love you." The casual normalcy of it felt obscene. He had no idea that while he was saving lives at the hospital, his wife was destroying his daughter's future. That the woman sharing his bed was the same one stealing from his dead wife's legacy. I couldn't tell him. Not yet. Not until I understood the full scope of what was happening, because if I was right about what I was starting to suspect, this went so much deeper than I'd initially thought. Rebecca emerged from the building 90 minutes later, and something about her had changed. Her shoulders were straighter, her smile wider. She looked like someone who'd just secured a victory. She didn't head back to the subway. Instead, she walked 2 blocks to a restaurant, the kind with white tablecloths and a sommelier. And that's when I saw him. A man, maybe 45, in an expensive suit. He stood when Rebecca approached, and the way he kissed her cheek wasn't friendly. It was intimate. Familiar. They sat at a corner table, and even from across the street, I could see the way she leaned toward him, the way she touched his arm, the way he looked at her like they shared secrets. I took photo after photo, my phone's camera zooming in as far as it would go. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. This wasn't just theft. This was a whole separate life. I called my grandmother from the coffee shop, my voice steadier than I felt. "Nana, I need you to remember something. When you signed those papers giving Rebecca access to my account, who else was there? Who witnessed it?" There was a long pause. "Well, dear, there was that nice attorney Rebecca brought with her. She said your father had recommended him, but I thought it was odd because I'd never heard your father mention him before." My heart sank. "Do you remember his name?" "Oh, let me think. Something with A.D.? Davis? Daniels?" I was already typing into my search bar. Premier Investment Solutions attorneys. And there he was, third name down the list, Robert Dalton, senior partner. The same man currently sitting across from my stepmother, holding her hand across the table while she laughed at something he said. This wasn't just about my college fund anymore. This was orchestrated, planned, possibly from the beginning. I thought about my father, about how Rebecca had pursued him so persistently after they met at that hospital charity gala. How she'd been so understanding about his grief, so patient with his mourning. How she'd suggested just 6 months into their relationship that maybe it was time to blend the finances and make things official. She'd been playing a long game. And I'd been too grief-stricken, too desperate for a mother figure, too willing to believe in her performance to see it. But now I saw everything. And I was going to make sure she regretted every single withdrawal, every lie, every moment she'd looked me in the eye and called me sweetheart, while robbing me blind. I just needed one more piece of the puzzle. The one thing that would make my plan work. The thing that would give me back everything she'd taken and more. And I knew exactly where to find it. My grandmother's apartment smelled like lavender and old books, exactly the way it had my entire life. But I wasn't there for comfort. I was there for war. "Nana, I need to see Mom's documents. All of them." She looked at me over her reading glasses, and I saw the sharpness in her eyes that everyone else missed. People thought age had dulled her, but she was the smartest person I knew. a retired federal prosecutor who'd built her career on reading people and dismantling lies. "You found something," she said. It wasn't a question. I showed her everything. The bank statements, the photos of Rebecca and Robert Dalton, the investment firm's specializations. She studied each image with the intensity of someone reviewing evidence in a criminal case. "Smart girl," she finally said. "You're just like your mother. She always said to trust your instincts about Rebecca." My head snapped up. "What?" Nana walked to her bedroom, returning with a wooden box I'd never seen before. Inside were letters, all in my mother's handwriting, dated from the final months of her life. "Your mother was worried," Nana explained, handing me the box. "She'd seen Rebecca at the hospital once, watching your father. This was before they'd even met officially. Your mother said something felt predatory about it, like Rebecca was waiting." I opened the first letter, my mother's elegant script blurring as tears filled my eyes. But these weren't tears of sadness, they were tears of vindication. "My darling Maya," the letter began. "If you're reading this, then my worst fears may have come true. I've asked your grandmother to give you these letters, if she ever suspects you're being taken advantage of. I hope I'm wrong. I hope whoever your father meets after I'm gone treats you with the love you deserve. But if they don't, if someone comes into your life pretending to care while seeking only what they can take, remember this. I've protected you in ways you don't yet understand." The letter went on to detail the trust structure, but more importantly, it explained the trigger clause. If anyone with fiduciary responsibility to my account misappropriated funds, the trust would activate a clawback provision. Not only would they have to return every penny with interest, but they'd be liable for punitive damages of 3 times the stolen amount. And here was the beautiful part. The clause was designed to be invisible until activated. Rebecca's attorney friend Robert Dalton had clearly read the trust document, but he'd missed this provision because it was buried in an addendum that only became part of the legal trust under specific conditions. Conditions my mother had ensured were met through a separate document held by her own attorney. An attorney Rebecca knew nothing about. "We need to call Harrison Miller," Nana said, already reaching for her phone. "Your mother's attorney. He's been monitoring the account, waiting to see if the safeguards would be necessary. He's been watching this whole time. Your mother was thorough, darling. She knew the type of person who might target a grieving widower with a substantial life insurance payout and a vulnerable daughter with a trust fund. She hoped she was wrong, but she prepared for the possibility that she was right." Within an hour, Harrison Miller was sitting in Nana's living room, spreading documents across the coffee table with the precision of someone who'd been preparing for this exact moment. "The question," he said, looking at me with the same serious expression I remembered from my mother's funeral, "is how you want to proceed. We can activate the clawback immediately, file criminal charges, and let the legal system handle it. Or," he paused, and something in his expression told me there was another option. One that required more courage, but would be infinitely more satisfying. "Or what?" "Or we let her keep going. Document everything. Let her move more money, involve Robert Dalton deeper, show a clear pattern of conspiracy and fraud. The longer it goes on, the more devastating the legal consequences. And more importantly," he leaned forward, "the more we learn about what she's really planning." I thought about my father, about his trust in Rebecca, about the way he'd look if I told him right now that his wife was stealing from his daughter. He'd be destroyed. He'd blame himself for not seeing it, for putting his need for companionship above his daughter's protection. But if we waited, if we let Rebecca's scheme fully unfold, the evidence would be irrefutable. He wouldn't blame himself, he'd see her for exactly what she was. "How do we know she won't empty the account completely?" I asked. Harrison smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Because I've been moving money too. For every dollar she takes, I've been transferring funds from the trust's protected reserves to replace it, keeping the balance stable. She thinks she's being careful, taking amounts small enough to avoid suspicion. She doesn't realize the account is essentially infinite right now, a honeypot designed to let her incriminate herself thoroughly." "How long do we wait?" "Mother's Day," Nana said suddenly. We both turned to look at her. "It's in 3 weeks. I suspect that's her endgame timeline. Think about it. What better moment for a stepmother to cement her position in the family? And what better cover for a major financial move than a holiday when everyone's distracted by sentiment?" The pieces clicked into place. Mother's Day. The day Rebecca would expect maximum emotional leverage, when my father would be vulnerable to her manipulation, when any suggestion that I was ungrateful or hostile to her as a mother figure would be met with his immediate defense of her. So we wait, I said slowly. We watch. We document everything. And on Mother's Day you give her exactly what she deserves, Harrison finished. But there was still something I needed to do first. Something risky, something that could blow the entire plan if I wasn't careful. Because I needed to know the full scope of what she was planning, and there was only one way to find out. I needed to make Rebecca trust me completely. Over the next 2 weeks, I became the perfect stepdaughter. I asked Rebecca for advice on everything. What to wear to a job interview, how to handle a difficult professor, whether I should consider changing my major. I laughed at her jokes. I thanked her for cooking dinner. I even suggested we have a girls' day together, just the two of us. She ate it up. I'm so glad we're finally bonding, Maya, she said over lunch at her favorite restaurant. The one where she'd met Robert Dalton, though she didn't know I knew that. I know it's been hard for you, accepting me as part of the family. But I want you to know that I care about you like you're my own daughter. The lies tasted like poison in the air between us, but I smiled. I know I've been distant. It's hard, with Mom gone. But you've been so patient with me. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Your mother would want you to be happy. She'd want you to have someone who supports your dreams. I thought about the money she'd stolen from those dreams and felt my smile freeze on my face. But I held it there perfect and trusting. Actually, I said as if the thought had just occurred to me, I wanted to ask you about something. I got an email from the bank about my account, something about updating security protocols. You handle that stuff with Dad now, right? Should I be worried? Her expression flickered, just for a second, but I caught it. Fear, then calculation, then a return to maternal concern so smooth it would have fooled anyone who wasn't looking for it. Oh, don't worry about that, sweetheart. It's just routine. I'll handle it. Are you sure? Because the email mentioned something about unusual activity. Maya! Her hand tightened on mine, just slightly too hard. I said I'll handle it. You focus on your studies. That's what your college fund is for, after all, making sure you have a bright future. The irony was so thick I nearly laughed. But instead, I nodded, playing the role of the trusting daughter who believed every word. That night, I checked the account. Another withdrawal, for $1,000. The biggest yet. I forwarded the notification to Harrison Miller, who responded with a single word. Perfect. The trap was set. Rebecca had taken the bait. And in 1 week, on Mother's Day, she was going to discover that the girl she'd been stealing from was her dead wife's daughter, in every way that mattered. Including the part where we didn't let betrayal go unpunished. But what I didn't know, what none of us could have predicted, was that Rebecca had a trap of her own. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 100 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter. Please subscribe, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now let's continue. The call came at 11 p.m. on the Thursday before Mother's Day. My father's voice was shaking in a way I'd only heard once before, the night my mother died. Maya, you need to come home. Now. I was at Nana's apartment, going over the final details with Harrison Miller. The clawback papers were ready. The evidence was compiled. We had photos of Rebecca with Robert Dalton, bank records showing the systematic theft, even recorded phone conversations that Harrison's investigator had obtained legally through some loophole I didn't fully understand. But something in my father's voice made my blood run cold. Dad, what's wrong? Just come home. Please. The apartment was dark when I arrived, except for a light in the living room. My father sat on the couch, his head in his hands, still wearing his scrubs from the hospital. And standing by the window, arms crossed, was Rebecca. She was smiling. Hi, sweetheart, she said, and the way she emphasized the word made it sound like a threat. We need to have a family conversation. I looked at my father, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad! Maya, he said slowly, his voice hollow. Rebecca told me everything. About the account. About your accusations. My heart stopped. What? Rebecca moved closer, and I saw it then. The satisfaction in her eyes, the triumph. She'd made the first move. She'd gotten to him before we could execute our plan. I know you've been following me, taking pictures, making up stories, she said, her voice dripping with false hurt. I understand. You're grieving, you're angry, you want someone to blame for your mother's death. And I'm an easy target, the stepmother, the outsider. But making up these elaborate fantasies about me stealing from you? Honey, that's concerning. I'm not making anything up. I have evidence. Evidence. She laughed, pulling out her phone. You mean the photos of me meeting with our family's financial advisor? The man your father and I hired to help manage our investments, including your college fund? Yes, Maya, I know about the pictures. Robert Dalton called me, very concerned, to tell me that someone had been photographing us during our meetings. I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet. She'd spun the narrative first, reframed everything I'd discovered into something that made me look unstable, obsessed, delusional. Dad, listen to me. I've seen the bank statements, Maya. His voice cracked. Rebecca showed me everything. The account balance has been stable. There haven't been any unauthorized withdrawals. But there have been multiple instances of you accessing the account at odd hours, obsessively checking it, even trying to change the passwords. No, this wasn't happening. That's because I noticed money was missing. I was documenting. You were documenting your own paranoia, Rebecca interrupted gently. And I've tried to be understanding. I've tried to give you space, to let you process your grief in your own way. But when you started stalking me, creating conspiracy theories, even involving your grandmother in these delusions, she turned to my father. David, I think Maya needs help. Professional help. I stared at her, understanding flooding through me with horrifying clarity. She'd prepared for this possibility. While I'd been building my case, she'd been building hers. A counter-narrative that painted me as an unstable, grief-stricken girl who couldn't accept her stepmother and had created an elaborate fantasy to justify her hostility. And my father, exhausted from double shifts, desperate to keep his fractured family together, already drowning in guilt about moving on from my mother, was believing her. Dad, please. Call Harrison Miller. Mom's attorney. He has all the real evidence. Your mother's attorney? Rebecca's eyebrows rose. Maya, sweetheart, Harrison Miller retired 2 years ago. I know because I tried to reach out to him when we were organizing your mother's estate documents. He has dementia now, honey. He's in a care facility. The room spun. That couldn't be right. I'd just been talking to Harrison, he'd been sharp, focused, helping me plan. But then I remembered. I'd never actually called him directly. Nana had made all the calls. I'd been so trusting, so focused on Rebecca's betrayal, that I hadn't thought to verify that the man sitting in Nana's living room was actually who he claimed to be. Who? My voice came out as a whisper. Who have I been talking to? Rebecca's smile widened. That's what we'd like to know, Maya. Your grandmother is quite elderly. It's possible someone is taking advantage of her, feeding into your conspiracy theories to cause trouble in our family. Or, she paused delicately. It's possible that in your grief, you've been imagining these conversations, creating evidence that doesn't exist. I have photos, bank statements, documents. I know you do, sweetie. David and I reviewed them. Some appear to be genuine documents that you've misinterpreted. Others look like they might have been digitally altered. There are apps that can do that now, did you know? And the photos of me with Robert are real, of course, but as I explained, those meetings were completely legitimate. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, opening my photo gallery to show my father the pictures of Rebecca and Robert Dalton at the restaurant, the intimate touches, the way they looked at each other. But the photos weren't there. The entire folder, weeks of documentation, had vanished. My phone, someone accessed my phone. Or you deleted them yourself, Rebecca said softly. In a moment of clarity, maybe you realized how far you'd taken this fantasy and tried to destroy the evidence of your obsession. Maya, this is serious. This is the kind of behavior that suggests you might be experiencing a psychological break. Your father and I have been researching treatment facilities. Treatment facilities? The words hit me like a physical blow. You want to institutionalize me? My father finally looked up, and the pain in his eyes was worse than his anger would have been. Not institutionalize, honey. Just get you some help. Somewhere you can rest, talk to professionals about your grief, about these paranoid thoughts. They're not paranoid thoughts. Dad, she's gaslighting both of us. She's been stealing from my college fund, she's having an affair with her attorney, she's planning something. I know it. But even as I said it, I heard how I sounded. Desperate. Hysterical. Exactly how Rebecca needed me to sound. Maya, my father said, standing up and moving toward me. I love you. Your mother loved you. Everything we've done, everything I do, is to protect you and give you the future your mother wanted for you. But right now you're not well. And if you won't accept help voluntarily. He paused, pulling a document from the coffee table. I've spoken with a psychiatrist. Given your recent behavior, we can file for a temporary evaluation hold. I don't want to do that. Please don't make me do that. A 72-hour hold. That's what he was threatening. 3 days locked in a psychiatric facility, being evaluated, medicated, while Rebecca had free rein to do whatever she was planning. 3 days that would go on my permanent record, that would make everything I said afterwards seem like the ravings of someone who'd been institutionalized. She'd thought of everything. I looked at Rebecca, and she looked back at me with those warm, concerned eyes that had fooled everyone. But just for a second, when my father turned away, her expression changed. The mask dropped, and I saw the real her, cold, calculating, victorious. She mouthed 2 words. I won. And that's when I realized I couldn't win this fight tonight. Not like this, not with my father turned against me, not with all my evidence mysteriously disappeared. If I kept pushing, kept insisting, I'd end up locked away, and Rebecca would have all the time she needed to complete whatever she was planning. So I did the only thing I could do. I surrendered. You're right, I said quietly. I'm sorry. I haven't been sleeping well. I've been stressed about finals, and I think maybe I did let things get out of hand in my head. The words tasted like ash, but I forced them out. I don't need a hospital, Dad. I just need to rest. And maybe talk to someone about processing Mom's death. My father's relief was palpable. Oh, honey. Thank you. That's all we want, is for you to be okay. Rebecca moved forward, pulling me into a hug that felt like a python's embrace. I'm so glad you're accepting help, Maya, she whispered in my ear. Your mother would be proud of how strong you're being. Over her shoulder, I saw my phone on the coffee table, the one that had mysteriously lost all my photos. And next to it, I saw Rebecca's purse slightly open. Inside, just visible, was a plane ticket. I caught a glimpse of the destination, Cayman Islands. Departure date, May 12th, Mother's Day. So that was the endgame. She was planning to run, probably with every penny she could steal, probably with Robert Dalton. Mother's Day wasn't going to be her triumph. It was going to be her exit. And she just neutralized the only person who knew about it by making me look like an unstable, delusional girl whose accusations couldn't be trusted. I pulled away from her hug, forcing a smile. I think I should go to bed. It's been a long day. Of course, sweetheart. We'll talk more tomorrow. I walked to my bedroom, closed the door, and stood there in the darkness, my mind racing. Rebecca had outmaneuvered me. She'd turned my father against me, destroyed my evidence, and positioned herself perfectly to escape with everything. But she'd made one mistake, one tiny error in her perfect plan. She'd shown me the plane ticket, which meant she was confident enough in her victory to stop hiding. And that confidence would be her downfall. I just needed to figure out how to expose her before she disappeared forever, taking my mother's legacy with her. I had 3 days until Mother's Day, and I was going to make them count. I called Nana at midnight, keeping my voice low. The Harrison Miller we've been talking to, is he real? There was a long pause. Of course he's real, darling. Why would you? Describe him to me. Height, age, distinguishing features. Another pause, longer this time. He's shorter than I remember, actually. Maybe 5'7"? And his hair is darker. When your mother first hired him, he had gray hair, but I suppose he could have dyed it. And I felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction. Just exhaustion and a deep, aching sadness that this was what my mother had been afraid of, what she'd tried to protect me from even in death. I'm sorry, Dad, I said quietly as they led Rebecca away. I'm so sorry. He couldn't look at me. Not yet. The betrayal was too fresh, the realization that he'd chosen her over me, even for a moment, too painful. But Nana put her arm around my shoulders. Your mother would be proud of you, she said. You protected what she built. You protected yourself. And eventually, your father will understand that too. The investigation uncovered everything. Rebecca had stolen $47,000 total from my trust. The real withdrawals I'd caught, plus additional amounts she'd moved before I started monitoring the account. She'd been planning the Cayman Islands escape for over a year, setting up accounts with Robert Dalton's help, creating false documentation, preparing to disappear the moment she'd extracted everything she could from our family. The real Harrison Miller's trust provisions activated exactly as my mother had designed. Rebecca was charged with wire fraud, grand larceny, and conspiracy. She's currently serving 8 years in federal prison. Robert Dalton got 12 years for his role in the scheme. My college fund was restored, plus the punitive damages my mother's trust provided. I finished my degree in criminal justice, inspired by Detective Morrison and my mother's foresight. My father and I are rebuilding our relationship slowly. He carries guilt that I keep telling him isn't his to carry, but grief makes us all vulnerable to people who know how to exploit it. And every Mother's Day, I visit my mother's grave and thank her for the gift she gave me. Not just the trust fund, but the wisdom to know that love isn't blind trust, that protection sometimes means preparing for the worst in people, and that sometimes the best way to honor someone is to finish the fight they started. On the gravestone, right below her name, is an inscription she chose herself. She protected what she loved. I'd add, and she taught her daughter to do the same.